Hello, welcome to Photography Out Loud. My name is Paul Davis, and as always, I'm joined with my colleague Joel Longbone. How are you doing today? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yeah. So obviously
It's
we
strange
planned
doing
the
it late,
glorious
isn't it?
sun. It is. I was just about to say because we planned to make sure that the sun was out today, on a Good Friday, and then because we planned to have the sun out, obviously we had to make sure that we were doing the Photography Out Loud session a little bit later on, just so we can enjoy the sunshine. Have you had a good day, Joel?
I've had a really good day. The weather's been nice. Got to get out and see some people. So yeah, it's been really good. How about you?
Yeah, very good. Very chilled. So I haven't done sort of pretty much anything. So just spending time with the family, the dog, the usual. It's been absolutely brilliant. So, and I hope everyone watching as well has enjoyed a Good Friday, and let us know what you've been up to in the comments. Love to hear what you've been up to. I mean, once again, we should maybe even say something like, "Oh yeah, we've been out photography and stuff like that," because of what we do. But yeah, let us know in the comments if any of you guys have been out photographing this lovely weather. We'd love to know what you've been up to. Or just give us a hello. It's always nice to know that people are watching.
Yeah, people are probably watching us in their garden with their phones, drinking some wine, probably. Or some sort of beverage.
Yeah, it's gone a little bit darker outside though. Saying that as I look, through a window that I can't really see out of, so I don't know what's going on outside at the moment. So, oh dear me.
I can just see. I can just see the mountains starting to fade into the sunset. It's nice.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of photography sort of after a day's work as well, because we're coming into that sort of stage where and especially with being able to sort of travel a little bit more as well, so it's become an option now, with getting a little bit lighter in the evenings.
Maybe we need to do a random session from outdoors.
Yeah, we could do
just after work if the weather's good. We could just go out. Could go down to the beach, couldn't we?
It's nothing stopping us doing it at the normal 4:30 time, and just sort of heading down to the beach and stuff. So
it's true.
First check if the internet connection's okay, and then see how we go on.
Running off our phones. No, it'd be good. It'd be good. Really good.
That's brilliant. Right, we should really get on with what we're here to do. So we're got a little bit of news.
We do. So Ricoh, who owns Ricoh and Pentax, launched the Pentax K3 Mark III this week. It's their kind of top of the range flagship DSLR that does the APS-C size. They've got the K1, which does full frame, but the Pentax range is really interesting in the sense that they're great cameras, but you get a lot of features for not a lot of money. And this one has almost 26 megapixel sensor, so on APS-C, and it's backside illuminated. And I can't remember the ISO, but it's very, very high. So it'd be interesting to see the results out of that. Plus, it's got stabilization, and almost all of their lenses will work with it as well, which is pretty good as well. So it'd be interesting to see what that's like when we get our hands on it. And
you can go really backwards in time as well with the Pentax stuff as well. You can even put on the manual focus lenses and stuff like that.
Yeah, the screw-ons and stuff.
So I think with even with some of the Pentax lenses as well, you can program in what aperture you're on, so it'll even actually show in the metadata and on the screen, like when you change your aperture as well, which is pretty cool. But
there's something nostalgic about Pentax as well, isn't it? Just everybody remembers K1000s or ME Supers or whatever, that kind of era of Pentax, which was really cool and still cool now. We still sell ME Supers and K1000s when they come in used.
And it's just a great round, and it sort of really feels that if you like the DSLR type of camera as well, then it needs to be on. If you're in the market for a new DSLR and you've sort of decided that you like DSLR and things like that, then the Pentax range, including the new one that's just been released, needs to be on a list of potentially picking as a camera, because
sure.
Like you said before, Joel, the amount of features that you get for the price point, there's nothing quite like it. There really isn't.
No, definitely not. But and also when you think about the range of Pentax and the fact that pretty much all of them are weather sealed, even like their lower range, which you'd never get in any other brand, just kind of shows you what Pentax thoughts are on building cameras, and like the build quality is just really good. So it'd be interesting to see, because hopefully it'll keep people still loving Pentax. So even though Pentax aren't doing mirrorless at the moment, but fingers crossed, maybe for the future.
Yeah,
because to get the feature set that they do in a DSLR and a mirrorless for the price that they do them for would be it would be pretty game changing for the mirrorless market. So we'll see. Time will tell. Also in the news, Canon has just brought out another firmware update for the 1DX Mark III, R5 and R6. So if you are one of the fortunate people to own any of those cameras, then go and check it out. Make sure that your camera is up to date. And hopefully you have a lens for it, because R5 and R6 owners at the moment, it feels like it's a difficult situation for Canon with the shortage of lenses. It kind of feels like we're selling a car and then saying you can have your wheels in 3 months' time. So, but I think it'll be well worth the wait.
It's been difficult getting a hold of the adapters as well, hasn't it? So
yeah, I don't think I've even seen an adapter since last year. It's ridiculous. And I mean, by last year, I mean like this time last year. So COVID has really hit all of us in terms of like manufacturing and the way it's trickled down the industry. But it'll be well worth the wait, because the R5 and the R6, wow, what cameras. And the 1DX Mark III is just, it is awesome, because it's like top of the line for Canon DSLRs, and like what that machine can do is mind blowing. But yeah, fingers crossed for the future when we get to see an RF EF mount adapter in free circulation of stocks. But also in the news, kind of sad, kind of good, depending on how you look at it. But Ray, our rep from Sigma, Uncle Ray, who's definitely a legend in the industry, and if you've been to the show, you'll have definitely seen him, has retired. Never thought I'd see the day, but he's retired. So all the best to Uncle Ray as he chills out, hopefully. But interestingly,
it was incredible, like it was the knowledge of the products that he had, but also like the knowledge of the industry, and like how he supports us is absolutely amazing, because he knows exactly what we need. He knows what independents are like, because we do work a little bit differently from the bigger boys.
That's true.
And there's some sort of manufacturers that we deal with, there's certain things that have to be done in a certain way and things like that, where Ray has always been sort of always fighting the battle for the independents, which has been amazing, but also backed up with that knowledge that he has on the gear as well, which is absolutely stunning.
And even aside from that, he's just a great laugh, just to get to see and just have a chat. Just a really nice bloke. But the good news in some ways is that we know who the rep's going to be that replaces him, which is Aidan, who used to work for Olympus or OM. So that's great, because Aidan's a great guy, and it'll be nice to be able to still kind of work with him, because he did such a great job with us with Olympus. So it'd be great to see him in a different role, but at least he's not leaving. So that's good. So sad that Ray's going, but good that Aidan's still in the industry and working with Sigma. And then I believe that Olympus are quite a long way through the process of getting Aidan's replacement. So time will tell. But it's great working with Sigma and OM. So hopefully the future is continuing to be bright with both companies and their relationship with us. So because I think that's one of the things that we work hard on, and helps us provide great customer services, that we have great relationships with all of our manufacturers, all of our reps, so that we know that we can trust all the products that we're selling, because we always know that there's that backup with the reps and the companies that we work with. So you won't find us ever importing things independently. We get them through like a proper distributor, so that we always have that ability to go back, and if something's not right, that they're there to help us. So I think that really gives us a lot of confidence to be able to sell the products to you, our customers. And then if anything goes wrong, then we're there to help you, because I think that's part of who we are, isn't it? Is the fact that we don't just sell you a camera, we're there for life. So you've bought your camera, your lens, etc., and if anything goes wrong, we're there to help you in whatever way we can. And part of that is our partnerships with all of our manufacturers and distributors. So it's really good when whilst we lose somebody fantastic like Ray, we know that somebody like Aidan is stepping into that role. So we know there's going to be that kind of continuing support, which is really good, especially with a brand like Sigma, because they're just such a great brand to work with, and they produce fantastic gear. Like their lenses are just... And I can't wait to see that metal cap. Every time I think about Sigma, I just keep thinking about that metal cap.
I know, yeah. That's the first thing. As soon as we see that those lenses come in, it'll just be like straight out, like, oh, what are you waiting for? The lens. It's just like, no, that cap. Cap.
All about the cap.
Yeah.
So it'd be good.
Just to add on something what you said as well, with how important it is for that relationship that we do have with some of the suppliers and distributors, and it comes to the point where there might not be things that we stock that that you might have seen online and things, and it's because potentially that distributor, that infrastructure isn't in place yet. So actually to get a hold of something is going to be very difficult, or the actual backup and support is going to be very, very difficult. When we sell you something, we want to make sure that we know that it's there is a system in place that if something does go wrong, we can just go, right, well, here's a new one. So it's something in place. So that is very important to us. So my earphones are about to go, so I just need to click a couple of things.
Well, I'm going to go through the comments whilst you sort out your ears.
Yep.
So Gwynville says, sunny and cold, glad you arranged it. You're welcome. I love the fact that we have zero control over the weather. Yet when it's good, we're definitely taking ownership. Happy Easter, Paul and Joel and Sarah from Ian. Thank you, Ian. I hope you're having a great one too, and continues to over the next few days. Gwynville said some macro stuff in the garden. Yeah, I feel like today would probably be a pretty good day for that, because it's hopefully there's a lot of things out and about. I saw a couple of bees earlier in my garden, so hopefully you got some good shots. Sarah says, hope you two have a great break. Yeah, I'm sure we will. And you too, Sarah. Make sure you don't do any work.
Yeah.
Work too hard. And
we should mention at that point as well. And we are going to be closed tomorrow on the Saturday. Just so, because normally me and Joel work throughout the week. And then we said, oh, we're going to have 4 days off. And we forgot about Sarah. So we sort of had the decision that, because of the times that we're in, because the shop is shut anyway, we just thought that, we'll just add that in as a day that none of us are going to be there anyway. And then we'll pick everything back up and on the Tuesday as well. So
but you can leave us a voicemail, and Sarah will get back to you on Tuesday. Emails will get answered on Tuesday. Facebook messages will get answered on Tuesday. So if you've got anything that's really pressing, pop it in an email, Facebook Messenger, or on the phone, and we'll get back to you on Tuesday. We'll be ready and raring to go after 4 days of not doing anything. Tina says, out with the camera this morning, taking puppy pictures, then a 38-mile bike ride after lunch. Goodness me. That sounds like a very busy Good Friday, but it sounds like a good Friday. So that's cool. And hello, Tina. Good to see you. Wayne says, was going to do some photography around Llandudno Pier, but they've been so unclear about when they were open fully, I missed out today. Will do tomorrow. Want to get in some more photography time with my A7 II and the Sigma 2470 2.8. Sounds like a recipe for a success. And hopefully you'll have a good day tomorrow. And he says, never had any interest in Pentax mirrorless for me. Interesting. I do hope that Pentax will bring out a mirrorless, because I think they'll do a very good job, because their DSLRs are very good. Graham says, loved my Pentax ME. Yeah, that's a blast from the past, but a very good blast. Sandra says, love my Pentax. I think there is a lot of love in the industry still.
Yeah,
for Pentax. And yeah, it shows when we mention Pentax. There's a lot of comments about it. So Lauren, she has worked with us on some of our shows in the past, says, hey, Jolio and Paul. Don't know many other people that call me that. Hello, Lauren. Good to see you. Johnny Mo says, evening, lads. Likey. It's great when you comment, Johnny, with your likey.
It's just a nudge to tell people, if you haven't liked the video already, this is the time to do it. Hit that thumbs up button. Give us some love. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah. Graham says, I know the feeling. I'm not quite sure what I was referring to. This is the problem when we leave the comments until after.
Yeah.
So Rob says, have just bought a Sigma 56mm 1.4 for portraits. Oh, that's going to be a good one for sure. Good choice. Graham says, it's rumored Sigma may do some Fuji mount lenses. Now, that's interesting if that does come off, because currently Fuji are the only people that really make at least autofocus lenses for X mount. So it'll be interesting to see if Sigma do, if they're going to make some of their current lenses backwards compatible with either an adapter or just a whole mount change. So it'll be good. It'd be really good. Especially if they can convert some of their bigger zooms, like the 150-600. That'd be really good for the Fuji users. They'll be loving that. Rob put another comment, same one. Lauren says, only me, of course. And Rob says, oh, it's for L mount. Cool. That's good. So nice to see you all. It's great when you comment. It's nice to know that we're not just talking to each other, because we could do that off camera. And not have to deal with awful lag. That's basically why we pause so much, isn't it, Paul?
Sorry?
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you all very much for your comments. It's always lovely to see them come through. Is it a time for a bit of training, Joel? What do you reckon?
Yeah. Oh, Graham says 150-600 on XE4. You wouldn't even know if the camera was on the lens, especially if you got the Sport. Flipping heck. You'd probably have to fit the XE4 inside the hood.
I think that'd be quite nice though, with the metal grip on the front and then on the thumb grip on the back. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Maybe.
Hopefully it comes true. What's it going to be, like an MC31?
Who knows? Isn't that a thing already? I don't know.
No, not the 31. The 21 and the 11, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think so.
Right, that's brilliant. Right,
to the training.
Hello, welcome to the training session of Photography Out Loud. If you're just joining us, my name is Paul Davis, and with me is Joel Longbone. Last couple of sessions that we've done, we've looked into loads of different things. So if this is your first session, you can actually go back and look at any of the training videos that we've done in the past, just to get up to date as well. So all of those are available on Facebook and YouTube, so you can go back and check them at any time. And I think at some point we're going to sort out a playlist as well. So
it's on our very long list of things to do.
Very long list of to-dos. Very long list of to-dos. So yes. So today we wanted to look into potentially why you'd want to come off the auto mode. So, whether you need to, as the type of photography that you do, what are the advantages of staying on auto and what are the advantages of coming off? So, do you actually use auto, Joel, at all now? Or do you find that, you have enough sort of, knowledge in the bank to sort of do what you need to?
Yeah, it's interesting you say it like that, because I quite often just think of auto as when I just don't have the wherewithal to be bothered with settings. Or it's great as well when I lend my camera to friends or family when we're out and about, if I want them to take a picture of our family, when that was a thing. And I can just literally twist it to auto and say, there you go, the camera will sort it all out for you. Just make sure that we're in the frame. And also it's great for the little ones. I've got 2 kids, although the youngest isn't really camera capable yet. But my son, he loves using cameras. So it's great just to stick it in auto, and at least he's got a fighting chance of getting something that's going to be exposed correctly. And also program mode I use quite a lot when I just want to, even if I just want to get an idea of what the camera thinks would be good settings at that time. And knowing that I can put it on program, it's going to do everything for me, but it's not going to pop up the flash annoyingly on some of the cameras. So I think auto definitely has a place for me still. But and program's probably something I use a bit more than auto. But I kind of class program as auto in lots of ways.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very much a type of auto mode, and it is just remembering what your camera can do. So, all of these sessions are about just sort of building that relationship with your camera a little bit. Once again, whether it be a mobile phone, little camera. I haven't got props with me today because I'm at home, aren't I? So normally I've got other cameras with me. But
there is an invisible camera in his left hand, an invisible camera in his right hand.
Yeah. So we'll see how we go. But it's building that relationship up with your camera. So I will sometimes still use my camera on auto. So I may be doing something, on maybe like a landscape photo, and I think, whatever's going on over there is quite nice. I don't really know what the settings are, or I don't even want to think about it. I just want to take a snapshot straight onto auto, and then I can play on. So, and if your photography is about just taking sort of nice pictures, then auto is going to sort of do that for you. And just remembering as well that if you are getting bogged down with the settings to the point where you're not picking up that camera and you're not going out taking pictures, then you're probably not ready to sort of move on, or you just need to be honest with yourself and just say, I'm happy staying in auto. I don't really want to sort of learn all the different things that are going on. So
there's no shame in auto.
No, there isn't. And I think there has been in the past, hasn't there? It's just like, you need to get it. You need to be on manual like straight away. If you're taking photography seriously, especially over the last couple of years, if you've got a fairly modern camera now, then your auto mode is going to do very, very well.
Yeah, I think also the great thing about auto, for me at least, is that if I turn up wherever it is, then I might leave it in program for a few shots just to kind of feel like, right, I've got the standard shots that I want to get, and then I can start being a bit more creative, just knowing I've got some in the bag. And also I think program and auto give you that ability to focus on what's arguably more important in photography, which is composition.
Yeah.
Or if you're working with a subject, be it a dog, an animal, or a human, and you're doing portraiture, I think that can be really, really useful as well. Or street photography, where everything's changing so much in terms of the light as people pass by and the distance, etc. And what you're trying to achieve might change. So just knowing that the camera's going to figure it out. Like if you're in a car, you don't have to worry about gears and things. You can just focus on the road ahead of you and accelerating and braking when you need to, and you're not worrying about when you're going to change gears and things. I think that's really, really important and probably underutilized by a lot of photographers, especially seasoned photographers that kind of know everything about photography, and they perhaps don't go back and just go back to the basics and go, the camera can figure that bit out for me, and I'm going to focus on the bit that only I can do, which is the composition, and the camera has no impact on my composition. So
I think it's great if, once again, even if you are a seasoned photographer, I've done it several times in my professional career. I've had like a hard reset on how I think. And, once again, gone back to that very automated way and then worked back to, where I need to be. And it does sort of cleanse the way that you think and allows you to think of potentially new ways of photographing. So, but let's quickly share my screen. There we go. So yeah, the auto mode. So a lot of your changes are going to happen on the function wheel, and we were talking about sort of moving on to
animations.
Yeah. So this came from another slideshow, so I've still got it from
reuse.
Yeah. So you can move on to your program mode, and essentially what's happening on your program mode is, like Joel said before, is very, very similar to what is happening on automatic mode. But what you'll notice is that some of the things inside your camera, phone, whatever, will start to open up a little bit. So last week we talked a little bit about using flash and using things like exposure compensation. So starting to make your pictures brighter or darker, or experimenting with flash. What you'll find is that you may not have these options on auto because the camera just wants to do everything for you. So moving on to a program mode is going to allow you to do these little changes, but still stay in a very sort of safe area, relatively speaking, for you to sort of experiment with. So definitely the first thing that we recommend coming from an auto mode is going on to program and then seeing what sort of opens up within your camera. As the name states, so it's a programmable mode. So anything that you program into your camera, you need to make sure or remember what you've done, because you might need to set it back to something, if something goes horribly wrong, because it does program in to the camera. Unlike auto, where any of the little changes that you can make, they'll actually be automatically reset once you turn the camera on and off again. So sort of fully auto mode is, a complete safe mode that you can always rely on. Program mode, if you do put something funny that's in from the menu system there, you do need to remember to switch that sort of off if you've been using it. The main thing that we're seeing with this is people have been experimenting with exposure compensation. So making the picture lighter and darker. If you want to know a little bit more about that, we did that in the last training video that we did. But if you say accidentally make it really, really bright, turn the camera straight off, come back to the camera a month later, and what it'll still be on its really, really bright mode. So you do just need to remember, to put things back while you're still in that learning time, I would say. See, I leave little gaps just in case Joel wants to make little comments, but
no, you did. It's good. It's good. I agree.
So, you like that, do you, Joel?
I do.
A little spin.
Simple things.
So, the other things that you might see on a function wheel, so the main area that controls what happens on your camera, is something called time value and shutter speed. So labeled TV or S on cameras, and it's to do with so shutter speed or your time value is measured in time itself. So the measurement that we use is time. So that's something that we need to bear in mind of. And what we want to do this week is look into more of the effects that using a a time value or shutter speed is actually going to do for you. So, why you'd want to come off auto and go on to something like shutter speed or time value. And as you can see in these two pictures, these are probably two ways of, really, really showing well the things that you can do with playing about with your shutter speed. So because shutter speed is measured in time itself, you have control over time in a way. It's really, really weird. So you have a way of expressing the way that time looks. And I need to be careful with these.
Strange or something.
Tenant as well. So like my brain wants to go sort of somewhere else as well. Essentially what you have the option of doing is you have the option of stopping any motion or expressing motion. And there's probably lots of different ways of saying it. So I'll be careful what I say. I might say a wrong word and I'll be in a trial again.
Yeah.
So there is the way that you'd be able to stop things in motion. So, and this is when something is moving. So you'd set the number faster than the subject is moving. So every time you take a picture and you want to either stop something within time or you want to express time itself, then you need to have a rough idea of how fast or how slow something is moving yourself. So for instance, with this little, this is where I fall down because I have no idea what that little birdie thing is.
It's a hummingbird.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, I think so. Where's Gary Jones when you need him? Come on, Gary.
Yeah. And Gary has said he's gonna teach us at some point, isn't he, as well? So to get us, but you can see like with the water as well. So we've all got a rough idea of how water would fall. So the number that we would set in our shutter speeds would need to be higher than the water falling to freeze it in time. And this is something that you can really experiment with. I remember when I was learning about shutter speeds, I think the best place you can do it is like at a water fountain, because you really get a good idea of like the way that you can express to show that water, or you can stop the individual water droplets sort of in that space of time as well. So one thing to remember with your shutter speed is that they are measured in generally increments of a second. So
it's like having a cake and taking 1/25th of a slice of cake.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? I like half seconds.
Great analogy as well. So
everybody loves talking about cake.
Oh yeah. So you should have said Easter egg though.
Yeah, but that doesn't cut up very easily. You're just going to eat the whole thing, aren't you? Because it's too brittle and it breaks when you kind of split it in half, and then can't even measure what increment it is because it's gone so fast.
Yeah, so it is something to remember though, because something that we do see a little bit of confusion on is like, is that 125 seconds? No, it's an increment of. And then what you do is that when you get to a slower, you'll see that little, either that line in the middle sort of disappear, or some little brackets, but the number will change, and that's potentially when you're going into the actual seconds themselves. And it's probably what happened on the picture on the other side, which was probably about, well, it's probably not a second, it's probably about half a second, I would say, to sort of show that motion. But it's something that you can play with. But the main thing is that shutter speed is going to express motion or stop motion. So it's that is what it's there for. If you don't need to do that, then there's not really you don't really need to come on to the shutter speed, So if it's not a question in your mind that you want to have answered within this photo that you're just about to take, is me showing the motion within the picture important, or is me stopping the motion within this picture important? Then if it's a yes on both of those, then you may need to look at shutter speed. If not, then that is something that you can may slip back into your program mode, or you can slip back into your auto mode. It's all about sort of compromising, asking those questions, what you actually need to get the picture that you want. So another thing that you might see on the function wheel is your AV, which is aperture value. So this just might be shown as an A, which sometimes can be a little bit confusing because there's already an A on the function wheel as well. Typically, if some manufacturers are putting A, they will actually list the auto as auto. So you'll have an A on your wheel, but then you'll also have, you know, the word written auto, so that there'll be a clear sort of identification between the two, hopefully. And
you'll soon find out when your images don't look great.
Yeah, indeed. And the effect that the aperture does. So there's a little bit of blurb about, you know, so the aperture is a fancy word for a hole. that's all it is. You can tell where I've grown up. Fancy word for a hole. We do measure it in something called F numbers. So once again, you hear this number thrown about, and we've talked a little bit about sort of photography measurements before in the past. It's just the name that we call them. You don't really need to worry too much about, you know, why it's called an F number or something like that. That's just the way that it's measured. And an aperture can be found in the lens, and it opens and closes to let the light in. But it's byproduct of
much like your eye.
Exactly. Yeah. The byproduct of your aperture opening and closing is it will control something called depth of field. Okay. Now this is probably when you're learning.
Fancy phrase for
a fancy phrase for
blurry or not blurry.
Yeah, or blurry or not blurry. And I think when you're learning, I think this is something that comes up incredibly quick, something that people mention to you straight away. It's just like you hear it, you know, you hear things like, you know, exposure, you know, you hear this F number, you hear depth of field, and, you know, it's one of those scary words when learning, can be quite daunting. And then once again, if you just Googled depth of field straight away, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. You get charts and, you know, numbers.
We love a good chart though, Paul.
Beautiful. Only if it's a pie chart.
Yeah. Talk about pie. Nom nom. I think it probably comes up so quickly as well because of lenses.
Yes.
Because that's how you almost determine how good a lens is. You kind of go, oh, what are the millimeters for the focal length, and oh, what's the f-stop? Like, what can I get down to? So it comes up quite quickly, and especially when we're talking to people about buying a camera or a lens or both, you kind of have to start teaching them a little bit, just so they kind of understand why they might spend a little bit more on a lens with a lower number rather than a higher number, But I think one of the great things about aperture is once you understand it, it becomes almost like your best friend for so many types of photography. Whilst it sounds scary, it's super simple.
Yeah. And I think as well is that even not having the full understanding is fine.
Yeah.
Because I think it's only when I got into actually training about photography, and when we had to learn exactly how depth of field worked, just in case somebody really needed to know, they really wanted to get into it. That's the only time that I truly understand how it worked. The rest of the time I had a rough idea, and it was always absolutely fine for me. And the very rough idea, especially just starting off, is the lower the number, the blurrier your background. The higher the number, the sharper your background. And this is going to sort you out very well, just to actually start off with. And And once again, when you start reading too much into it, this can get a little bit confusing, but just keeping it very simple to start with. And within these sessions, we will get into depth of field a little bit more. There might even be a whole sort of episode on it to explain, the importance of like different, the way that you can use depth of field to really take advantage. But again, it's asking that question, is a blurry or sharp background important to me? Is it something that's going to make or break this image? And
I think something that's useful, at least for me at the beginning, was to understand what the numbers were doing. Was if I wanted only a few people in focus, then like f2.8, f4 was where I needed to be. And if I wanted lots of people in focus, then I would use a higher f number because I've got more people in my shot. So therefore, I need to get more of them in focus. So it might be useful to understand that if you want more of something in focus, then a higher number is useful. If you want less in focus, then the lower number is useful. It might. I don't know.
It's a way that you find a way that sort of makes sense in your head. But just even simply looking at very on its simplest form, these two pictures here that we've got on the screen, is that you can see that using that lower number, your background's a little bit blurry, and using that higher number, the background's probably, it's not sharp though, is it? That's the thing. Even in this photo, it's not sharp. And that's something to bear in mind, is that sometimes you're just not going to get it. It's just not going to be sort of there available to you.
But you can see the creative use of having a blurry background, because it draws your attention to the sunflower head straight away. Whereas the f22 one, there's more information in the shot, isn't there, in terms of what's going on in the background?
So that is a question, and within this particular picture that we're looking at here as well is, how do I make this this picture look better to yourself, or if you're looking at it from a point of view of aesthetically pleasing, what's going to make this picture generally better, is that, like you said, the background, there's nothing really much going on there, so it would be nice just to blur that out, and then the user, the viewer, can just concentrate on looking at the flower, and that's the first thing that you see. So if you're wanting people to see that as the first thing, then having it in focus and blurring everything else out is going to make that happen. It's interesting that you said about like you said about having people in the shots before as well, but it's, once again, would it make or break the picture? It's a case of I can see lots of different people at different things. If it was like a setup group and there were people at different distances, then obviously yes, this is going to take it into account. The thing that you've got to remember now as well, and cameras are still very clever. So if you are on auto or program, it's probably noticed that there is a few people in this shot, and will probably get you that sharpness that you need throughout those different people. So once again, it's something to play about with, but it's definitely something that you can sort of learn on and just sort of play about with. And I'd say that is the key, is play about with moving that aperture up and down, so making that number higher and making that number lower, and experimenting yourself, rather than just trying to read about depth of field. If you just Google it straight away, you're gonna get these spreadsheets and all of these different things that it does start to get a little bit confusing. There's no replacement for going out and actually playing with your camera, and once again, just asking those questions of is this going to make a difference for me? So
this is where having like a 50mm 1.8, which tends to be quite an inexpensive lens for most cameras, because then you have the extremes. 1.8 is going to give you very shallow depth of focus. So you can see really obviously how only the eye and maybe back to the ear will be in focus at 1.8. And then f4 will give you pretty much the whole face in focus. And then being able to push it out to f16 or f22 shows you that you're going to get almost everything in focus. And if it's not in focus, like Paul said, like bang on, it's just optically impossible. But you're going to get so much more. And that's where kind of landscape photographers tend to live in the higher numbers, and portrait photographers tend to live in the lower numbers. And that's just the part of creativity. So it's one of those things, like Paul was saying, like if you can go out and try it out, and if you can get a lens like a 2.8 or 1.8 or 1.4, it will make it abundantly clear how shallow that depth of focus can be and the creativity that it gives you. So yeah, I definitely think just going out and trying it. You can always learn about charts after the fact.
Yeah.
Unless you're a super technically minded person, like a scientist or an engineer, and you just need to know how it all works.
Yeah,
it tends not to be very helpful.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're used to reading data and figuring out stuff like that, then yeah, it's that would work absolutely fine for you. And again, it's just finding a way of learning. If you're that person, you're probably there already. So, and you're just here on here just for the rise, just for the fun. Or watching the wrong YouTube show. So.
Yeah.
I think if we go through a couple of scenarios now, Joel, and just see where and we can talk about what the setting would be, and see which is the well, not the best, but how we would sort of approach it as well. So classic landscape sort of shot. What would you sort of tend to sort of do when you go out?
Well, I'd probably start at, I imagine, f16. It feels like a safe, or f11 maybe, depending on the lens, I suppose, as a start and what kind of landscape it is. But I think I'd probably start at one of those numbers, to be honest. And then if I'm on a tripod, it probably doesn't make much difference what shutter speed I'm at, unless there's water in the shot and that I want to behave in a certain way. Either freeze it, like you said, but most times you'd want to get a bit of blur in it because it just gives a softness and painterly feel to your shot. Or if there's a lot of trees, I might want to freeze those a bit so they're not too distracting. And it depends if there's clouds in the sky as to whether I want them to be moving or not. But I tend not to worry as much about my shutter speed on a landscape unless there's an obvious reason for it. It's more my aperture that I care about, I would say. But I'm no landscape photographer, so Paul probably knows more than I do. Paul knows more than I do.
No, but it's interesting because once again, even then, I was going to mention, what if there was water in the frame, but you've already sort of worked through that list sort of straight away. So we can break that down and we can have a look at that. I said landscape photography. It's probably the most broad way of me asking sort of how you set up, and absolutely, there is no right answer to actually setting it because it does depend on what's absolutely in front of you. Is it a bright day? Is it is it a dull day?
It doesn't even take into account if you're going to be using filters, whether that's a polarizer or whether that's a neutral density or graduated neutral density. Like there's so many variables, I think, in and I'm not talking about filters. I'm talking about shutter speed, aperture, and all those different, and the accessories that you can use for your landscape photography. I think it's very difficult, but I think it can be quite useful, or at least is for me, to kind of say, well, I'll start at this point, f11, and then especially in program mode, or setting it on aperture priority AV or A mode, and just going to go, okay, f11, what's it saying? Okay, a 250th of a second is what it's saying. Okay, I can work with that. I think that there's nothing in the shot that I really care about allowing to move and have motion, so 250th is fine. But if I think, I want a 30th of a second or a quarter of a second, I need to go, well, what am I going to change here to make that achievable? So
and it could be simply just going on to the So again, if you wanted to express motion, you'd be able to go onto the shutter speed mode and then move down onto that slower setting. Once again, like we saw with the, I can just quickly bring it up on the screen here again. The flower shot, we saw that the background wasn't completely in focus. There may be times where we talk about landscape photography and say, oh, I want to blur the water, and just because of the type of day that it is, and we say that I want to express that motion within the water, and I take that picture and it just doesn't come out because it's not available. And that's something that we will go down. There are ways of getting around it. Joel sort of hinted at using things like filters, and that's the way that you do it. But once again, just from starting, it's is there water in the frame? Do I want to express it? And if you do, then you can go on to shutter priority and then move that shutter speed down until that water starts to blur. Or if you wanted to freeze it, if you wanted to freeze it, then you're saying that the movement in the frame, the thing that I want to freeze, is the important bit. So that's when you go onto the shutter speed and then move that up until it freezes. The way that you looked at a landscape is that, for yourself, it was all about sort of, I like to get everything, nice and sharp if I can. So that sort of starting point is, well, I want that background to be sharp if I can. So moving on to aperture priority, setting it at a higher number. Once again, a little bit of tolerance either side, just so you have a little bit of control if you needed to. And then, you can start from there, asking those questions, and you're going through it from there. And
that's what photography is, though, isn't it? It's a series of questions.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to achieve the shot that I want?
Yeah. And you can tackle any type of photography in this manner. So we could completely flip the type of photography. So we've got landscape that is very, very, you're a bit slowed down, you're taking your time, you might have a tripod. You could flip that on its head and you can say, well, things like motorsports or wildlife photography, which we have absolutely no experience in between us. But
I do a motorsport.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't assume just because I don't.
I've taken pictures of a raptor before.
Have you?
Like one workshop.
Okay. Right. So you've got more experience than I have, but once again, with a little bit of knowledge, even the knowledge that we've learned here, just asking those questions, and what's important to me here is, do I want a background that is sharp or do I want a background that is blurry? That doesn't matter. The thing that matters here is, do I want to express the motion within the bird or do I want to stop it? So, or in the car. And we've seen with pictures like Gary Jones, he can cut that sort of line very finely and actually show areas of the picture that are sharp, but then also showing motion within the frame as well. And they're very, very magical numbers that you can find. And that comes with experience and just trial and error. And the same with go on, sorry.
Also, I was going to say that in instances where it could be quite difficult, because it's a bird or an animal that's quite inconsistent in the way it moves, or in a car or a motorbike on a track, for instance, where they might not always come in at the same point for whatever reason, then also utilizing that depth of field can be quite helpful. So you might really want to shoot at f4 if you could, or 2.8, because you just want the car as your point of focus. But bearing in mind that it might come in at a different place, or you might even get two cars and you want both of them coming into focus, then using like f8 helps you achieve that. But also, I think wildlife and motorsport photography, or sports photography in general, are probably the places where understanding shutter speed and aperture are probably very important, more important than other genres potentially, in terms of once you know how they interact with one another, you can achieve shots that, like Paul was saying, that Gary can do is capture the bird really still, because he's learned to pan effectively. So he's actually using still quite a slow shutter speed. And that's why the background has this kind of lovely motion to it. But the bird is like really nice and sharp and crisp. And that's because Gary understands how those numbers work.
Yeah. And he's expressing motion, not in the subject, but in the background. So it's giving, you feel that the picture is moving. So
it's like with motorsport photography, it's quite common, or even maybe sprinters that are going very quickly, that some photographers will keep the background still and allow motion blur of the vehicle or the human running. Whereas other times, most often, you're panning so that the background is nice and blurred. The wheels, in terms of motorsport photography,
they might blur.
Which looks fantastic because you just get that lovely dynamism. But again, that's just understanding how a slower shutter speed, and you're going to have to move at the same speed as a subject, which is probably where the art of sports and wildlife photography is really getting down to the nitty gritty. Is, can you pan? Yes or no? Everything else almost falls out of kind of, well, once you've got your numbers, then it doesn't really matter because you can kind of play around with those a little bit. But if you can pan, then it doesn't really matter, because once you can do that, you can pick and choose. You can choose to freeze the background and the subject, or you can choose to let the other one do its thing. And I think that's probably where the magic of understanding shutter and aperture more in depth than maybe in other genres, or when you're really at the beginning of your photography journey. I think that's where the numbers start coming into their own and being very, very useful, because you understand their relationship more closely, I think. So
yeah. So, and it's just, once again, it's looking at that expressing or stopping motion is important to me at this point. That's where may go on to the shutter priority, or the time value, as it's sometimes called on the camera. And then again, just playing with that number. If we're wanting to stop motion, the shutters or the time value has to go higher. So you're going into increments of, maybe 1,000, 2,000. So you might see that number get quite high. And then obviously, if you're wanting to express motion within the frame, so like Joel said, if you've got your panning absolutely nailed down, so you're following your subject exactly at the same speed, then you can start to express motion within the background, within your wildlife and sports photography. So that's hopefully helped out a little bit. Try not to get too technical. Try and get out with the camera and experiment. So find something maybe where you can express and stop motion at the same time. So like I said before, like a fountain. The beach is a great place to do this. So like the waves coming in is a fantastic place to do this.
Waterfalls. I love a waterfall for me.
Yeah. is brilliant.
I think a waterfall or a fountain's really good, because you're having to learn how light interacts with water, especially if the light is being reflected or it's coming from a different angle. The beach is great, and I think the beach gives you a lot of creativity because it's so irregular in the way that the water flows in and goes out and things, which has a beautiful painterly effect as it kind of draws out if you're using a slow shutter speed. But I think fountains and waterfalls, or even a tap, or a shower, some of the shots you can get with the way that the water hitting the bath when you're filling a bath is really interesting, because of the light and the way that it plays, and you get the light coming through the water moving, and the way that affects the light as it hits the back of the bath or the water, and understanding how that kind of plays out. And I think it's one of those times where learning about motion, water is probably the easiest one, because it's very consistent, i.e. it's always going to fall downwards, unless it's through a hose pipe or something. So you always know which direction it's going to go. And then you can even set up your tripod and go 1/4 of a second, see how that looks, 30th a second, 125th, 1000th, whatever, and you get just within like 3 minutes, you'll get enough shots to kind of go, oh, that shows me exactly how my shutter speed's going to affect whatever I'm taking a picture of. And you can teach yourself very, very quickly, especially if you have like a mirrorless camera as well, because you can see that shot as soon as you've taken it. So you're not even pulling away from the camera. So you can really flick through those times, the shutter speeds really quickly, and get a very good idea of the effect you're going to get, which is also useful when you're out and about and you don't have as much time. Just so you can kind of go, oh, this is the effect it's going to give me. Even, take your picture and you can see it. And then you can go, oh, it's not quite right. So I can tweak it very quickly. So, yeah. Shutter speeds are great.
I think Joel's just rediscovered the love of shutter speeds live here.
I just remember going, oh, I can use 4,000th of a second on a waterfall because it's so bright. Because 4,000th of a second is pretty useless in every day. It wasn't until there's a lot of light that you get to really play with your higher shutter speeds and see, why they can be really useful for certain types of photography. So.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Have we got any relatable comments, or is it just sort of?
No. So Lauren says, finally looking to invest in a camera later on this year. We'll have to come by because I've got no clue. Well, we can definitely help you with that. No problem at all. Johnny.
We're also the, what is this, like lesson 5 of the videos, and you still haven't got a clue. We'll have to go.
Oh, maybe she's talking about the camera, not the settings.
All right. Okay.
We've not really spoken about cameras as much, have we? I don't think. So
that's very true.
We'll give her the benefit of the doubt, and if she doesn't know anything about camera, like photography, then we'll have to give her head a wobble. Johnny says, yes, it's a hummingbird. Phew. I don't think I'm going to be beating Bill Oddie to any understanding of birds anytime soon, but I'm glad I was right. Johnny Mo says, this made me giggle even in my head when I read it. So if we go to a full second, is that like stuffing the whole cake in your mouth in one go? That must be why I'm getting a lockdown belly. I'm doing too much long exposure cake eating. Yes, that is exactly the reason, Johnny. I love that. I'm glad I mentioned cake now. What's brilliant. The best type of photography? The type where you get to eat the whole cake.
Yeah.
Jonathan says, you're meant to be off. Yes, but we couldn't not.
Every Friday.
Friday. Exactly. Unless it's a Thursday.
We'll just do it later.
Yeah. We almost did it on Wednesday. We thought that's far too early. We can do it Thursday. Then we'll talk about Saturday, and we're like, no, we'll just do it later. And then Jonathan says, unless you're shooting at infinity with a telescope. I feel like,
that could be.
That's something we should do. We should get Jonathan and Tracy to come and do an Astro for beginners with us.
Astro for beginners would be awesome.
And then like the more intermediate or advanced, we can go on to like trackers and stuff. Because Astros and nightscape photography is getting a lot of love at the moment. So Ollie says, Jimmy Marjo. I really beg for forgiveness on the pronunciation of that. Might be of interest. Definitely going to look into that. Tony says, as being self-taught, it's all about trial and error. Yeah, and I think especially with digital photography, there's literally no real cost to trial and error at this point. Back in the day when it was just purely film, or if you still have a film camera, then maybe it's more useful to be a bit more kind of conscious of the process. And you'll have to kind of write notes as to what you were doing on each frame so that you could understand the effects it had. But I think digital really gives you that ability to try things and see how it goes. So Will says, I find stopping down helps camera grab focus quicker, but there's no fun in that. It's true. I feel like, but it is sometimes quite useful, I think, to play around with your aperture so that you do give your camera a bit more of a chance of nailing focus on fast things. I know Will's been taking a lot of pictures of jets and things like that, which are incredibly quick. And depending on your vantage point, it can be quite helpful to help the camera out.
And I think that's a really good sort of it's a great comment on like the advancement of like photography and really nailing down because if that's like a passing thought to me, like, you know, how can I improve the performance of taking something really, really quick? I'd have to have a little think before I said something like, oh, maybe I could, you know, do something with my aperture. And that's really, you know, when you start to refine, when you're really into something and, you know, you're enjoying it, then that's when you can start to really refine down into, you know, what's important to you.
I think that's quite evident. If you ever read up about street photography and zone focus, and understanding that if you can shoot at f8, for example, and instead of trying to shoot at 2.8 or f4, you give yourself a much bigger window of opportunity in terms of getting that person walking into a shot. Because it's quite difficult, even for a modern camera, to still track focus that quickly when you can be quite close and in light conditions that are not helpful for a camera to keep something in focus, or in certain conditions where the camera can't see the face as easily or as quickly or as obviously as kind of face on like this. So it is a really interesting point that Will mentions that, because I know he does a lot of sports photography and wildlife and things. But equally, it's useful. Like I've thought about it with taking pictures of the kids in the garden when they're running around quite erratically. If I shoot at f8, I give the camera more of a chance of getting focus. And also creatively, it gives a bit more context to what the kids are doing. Because sometimes if you're shooting at 2.8, then all their toys or, you know, whatever they're playing with kind of become just blobs of color. Whereas I think it can be quite useful with kids to kind of show the context in which they're playing, whether it's toys or the beach or whatever. So, Caroline says, "Sorry, I wish I wasn't there at the start of your talk. No problem. Why is the point of focus not always where the camera shows it?" That's a question that might be more useful if we can get a video call with you or a phone call, just to go through what camera you've got. And what conditions you
know what camera you have. So if you message us on like Facebook or Instagram, just with that question, and then we can start a conversation, and then we can get you sorted. And there'll be a reason why. We just need a little bit more information.
And if you do that, then maybe we can bring it up in a later talk about, you know, some of the common issues with autofocus and how you can kind of get around those issues. So Ian is saying, now go and enjoy your 3 days off. Thank you very much, Ian. I feel like if we don't, Sarah will tell us off. So we'll definitely be good. Will says 545 shots taken Tuesday, maybe 30 keepers. Goodness me. What were they? How fast were they moving? I think that's the other thing that's great about digital photography is, could you imagine how much it would have cost in film for 545 shots?
You wouldn't have done it. It's completely changed the way that sports and wildlife is looked at. It's it's a different game now.
Even still, like 540 shots in like Lightroom or whatever, trying to pick the ones that you're happy with. But no, it's part of photography, isn't it? It's part of practice. It's part of trying to just get to the point where you're happy with the shots that you're getting, and you give yourself way more chance when you've got a large memory card and a continuous autofocus and goodness me, really up to 500 knots thereabouts. Good grief, that's very fast. Yeah, it's no wonder. Oh dear. No, and the great thing is that modern cameras are getting even better at autofocus and also getting higher frame rates, so you're able to get way more shots off in a given time period, so you're more likely to get something. So and Tony says sport best 2.8 or f4 if have relevant lens at 1000 or 2000. And again, this goes along with, like Tony says, he was self-taught and it's about trial and error. And for the sports that Tony is into, these can be very useful shutter speeds and apertures for the effect that he wants. But again, it's all about what you're choosing as a photographer as to what you think works best for you. Because 2.8 can be fantastic if it's, you know, a single person. I know Tony does like rugby and football and things like that, so it can be great to get that one person who's running, like dribbling the ball or scoring that goal or that try. But other times I think F8 or F11 can be fantastic to show that it is a team sport and there's, you know, lots of players on the pitch at one time. I think that's really useful as well. And I think if there's anything you learn from this, I think it's understanding shutter speed and aperture helps you get the image you want, based on whether you want motion in it or no motion, whether you want everything focus or only one thing in focus. I think that's at least the biggest thing for me.
More importantly as well, if those questions even don't need answering, then you're quite happy to stay on program or even the auto mode. So though we're saying that they are, you know, well, they are important to photography and, you know, especially part to a learning journey, but also still having that backup of that program mode, of having that auto that you can actually use to go back onto if you're not too sure, is wonderful to have that on a camera. So you can always go back to it if you're ever unsure. And again, if they're not questions that need answering, then you know, do I need to worry about motion? Do I need to worry about background and stuff like that? If that's not the case, then we know that we can stay on auto and we can just have fun with taking the pictures and stuff.
Definitely.
Right, that's brilliant. I believe that's all the comments. Are we there with the comments?
It is, I believe so.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been wonderful having you here. It's always lovely to see, and amazing comments as well. So people joining in, helping.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful, isn't it, to kind of help kind of add something to the mix, something that we might have missed or not explained as clearly. And also it's really helpful, people like Tony saying that he's self-taught through trial and error, and Tony gets some great shots. Very good. And it's great to see like Will, you know, kind of mentioning something that we hadn't really picked up on, and seeing how that can be really helpful. I think it's great. I love that kind of community, almost forum feel where people are helping each other out. Feels really good.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic. It's lovely. It's lovely to see, and you know, hopefully you can get some questions answered as well in some private sort of messages as well. So if you've got any questions about photography, you know, we're always here to try and help out as much as possible. So you can drop us a DM on Facebook or Instagram. You know, just send us a message, and you know, we can try our best to absolutely help you. Please don't feel discouraged if we don't get back to you like immediately. You know,
especially over the next 3 days.
Especially over the next 3 days. We do see every message that comes to us via all the different platforms. So whether you're messaging on the website, Facebook, Instagram, there's so many more, Google.
Carrier pigeon. No,
carrier pigeon. So we do see all your messages, and we will get back to you eventually. And hopefully going forward, we will be back up to full speed going forward into the summer. So looking forward to seeing that. Joel, any final thoughts before we break up for the weekend?
No, just have fun. Hopefully the weather is good, so you can get out with your camera. And try out aperture and shutter speed if you haven't already, and enjoy program. Maybe you need to go back to program and not mess with settings and just see what the camera thinks of the situation. But yeah, have a great weekend and stay safe.
Yeah, I might take a leaf out of my own book and maybe just go back onto auto for the weekend and actually take some pictures for once, rather than sort of worrying about what my settings are and stuff. So, it's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't done already, please can you share the video? So every time you share it, oh yeah, and all that.
Come on, Johnny.
You share a video, it helps us spread the word about what we're actually doing here on Photography Out Loud with the training, and also the weekly lives that we do with the news and updates, special guests, obviously updates on all the future things that we'll be doing as well. So please make sure you can share the video. Again, go onto our Facebook and YouTube pages, hit that like, subscribe button, because all of that helps as well if you haven't done already. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers. Bye now.